What a difference a year makes. Here in June 2013, well, we can look back and wouldn't have really thought that a president of the United States would have come out for safe-sex marriage. It would have, as of this taping, 12 states in the District of Columbia allowing for safe-sex marriage. A lot's been going on. And two people who have been in the forefront of it from the beginning are Stuart Gaffney and John Lewis with marriage equality. Stuart, John, welcome.
Thank you.
And I want to correct myself. At the beginning, I said that you were with Equality California, but it's...
Marriage Equality USA, but we're all working together for
Yeah,
equality.
and of course, you know, this show is going to air beginning the week of June 17th, so we're living in this kind of tenuous time. I'm hoping by the time this airs that we'll be having a celebration, which I understand for you, June 17th is your anniversary.
Yes, we're hoping for not just a wedding celebration for the two of us. We were one of the lucky 18,000 that were able to get married before Proposition 8 in California.
Yeah, me too.
It'll be our 5th year anniversary of marriage, 26 years together. And we're hoping for a great decision out of the U.S. Supreme Court that stands up for marriage equality and, most importantly, equality for LGBT people in all aspects of their lives.
People will ask my husband Alfredo and I, well, how long have you been married? I'm like, well, it really kind of, you know, who you ask. We say 15 years, state of California says 4. It's I mean, we laugh about it, but I mean, when you guys met 26 years ago, did you ever conceive that you would be there as married men legally?
Well, you know, John and I met in 1987 and immediately felt a bond of kinship. And actually, I remember just about a week after we met, a friend of mine from college was visiting from out of town, and he asked me if I'd met anybody new, and I said to him, I've met my future husband. I think at the time what that meant to me, though, is that he's like family. I feel like I've known him forever. We speak the same language. This is the man I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Yeah,
I remember when Alfredo and I met, we had a ceremony, and we had 2 friends who were in the Episcopal Church, and the Episcopal Church, 15 years ago, was still wrestling with what to call it. And we were doing this invitation. Well, it's our commitment ceremony. It's this, it's that. And finally, I just had enough of it. And I said, it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's a duck. It's our wedding. You guys can figure out what you want to call it. I mean, has this whole process politicized you in a way that you didn't conceive of 26 years ago?
Well, you know, it's still about love and commitment. That's what makes a marriage. And I think many of us, we would like nothing better than just to be able to go on and live our happily married lives. But of course, we know it's a political issue in this country right now. But how satisfying to see the momentum building day after day, week after week. Just recently, we've seen 3 states in 3 weeks pass marriage equality through their legislatures, signed by their governors. We're living in a time of historic change, so it's very exciting.
All right, what do you think was the tipping point?
I think the tipping point in some ways, you know, was when the President of the United States came out for full marriage equality. And I think it was a tipping point because it was really emblematic of everyday, ordinary Americans' lives, because he talked about how what really made the change for him was sitting around the dining room table and hearing his daughters talk about their friends who had 2 moms or 2 dads, and him coming just to the most common sense realization that there is no reason why 2 moms or 2 dads or any 2 people who love each other should be treated unequally, should be treated differently just because they are LGBT.
Right. As far as a cultural issue, when do you think the tipping point, I agree with you, I think was when President Obama came out in a way that was very moving and very, very clear. But culturally, for the last few years on TV and in movies, we've been talking about it. When do you think this became kind of a non-issue for a new generation of people? Because I think it is more and more, as you say, an issue not about politics, but about love. It's like, well, why couldn't they get married?
I think culturally the tipping point is actually a series of moments, and they're the moments when couples have lined up to say I do. And we first saw that in San Francisco City Hall in 2004. We saw it again in 2008 when marriage was legal in California. We saw it in Massachusetts. And the recent celebrations we've seen from New York State to just now in front of the Minnesota State House, that celebration of love, America is seeing that and realizes there's a common instinct that we all have to love another person, and they're recognizing that celebratory feeling. When you tell somebody you just got married, the first thing they say is congratulations. And I think in a broader sense, America is seeing our community and our couples in a new way and realizing they should not be opposing us, they should be congratulating us. And that is creating a cultural shift at a faster pace than we've ever seen before on what used to be a controversial social issue.
Yeah, in my family, we're a bi-coastal and a bi-political family. I'm a left-leaning Democrat, and my brother is one of the founding members of the Tea Party. And obviously, we've had some very interesting conversations over the years. But what Alfredo and I, my husband and I, discovered in conversations with my very politically conservative brother and sister-in-law was that the issue of same-sex marriage made them what I realized was, quote-unquote, true Republicans. I mean, they don't want the government in their gun shed, and they don't want them in their bedrooms. Have you been surprised at some of the political allies marriage equality movement has had?
Well, I think that's something that the current Prop 8 case before the United States Supreme Court really demonstrates. There you have George Bush's lawyer arguing for the freedom to marry. And I think it underscores something that is so important about the marriage equality movement, that it's ultimately about our common humanity. And to me, that's what the entire LGBT movement is about, our common humanity, that we all should be treated with basic dignity and respect. Right. And in the terms of American language, freedom. It's about our freedom. And that's true. It's about our freedom to be who we are and to be respected under the law and to have that freedom to live and love and be respected for it.
How challenging is it to have your private life, your work life? I mean, I mean, you are professionally married in a way. I mean, you don't have a work wife or a work husband. I mean, you're the media director for marriage equality. You're the legal director.
Well, I'll tell you.
What's that like?
It's, we had thought about that. We had been asked that a couple years ago. And sometimes it's hard and stressful and there's a lot of work, but there is a secret to marriage equality advocacy. And that is it's inherently romantic. Because at base, it's about love. And it's about telling your love story over and over.
Right.
So Americans who maybe just don't get it, that, yeah, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people, we do have loving relationships just as anybody else does.
Right.
And that basic common humanity and that love story is the foundation of our movement. Of course, it's about more rights and sometimes divorce and that sort of thing, but the foundation is love. And it's a real pleasure, in a sense, to have been doing this all the years together.
And of course, we're all here as media professionals, in a sense, professional homosexuals, and we all know the importance of words and strategy. I mean, in the same way that, other political issues like choice, one side of the debate wants to call it choice, the other wants to call it abortion rights. The drive for marriage equality has been very much about finding, in a sense, a winning strategy. How much does that impact your work on a daily basis dealing with media? Because I'm sure that there are some media who, you had them at hello, and there's other media that are like, come on, bring it on, prove to me what your issue is really about.
Well, the great news here is that the work we do with Marriage Equality USA is about having same-sex couples and their loved ones and their supporters advocate in their own words for why the freedom to marry is so important. And keeping it personal is actually our best strategy. And that's what real-life couples actually do best. They talk about how much they love each other. They talk about their wedding day or their plans for their wedding day, the kids they hope to raise. These are all winning messages. And the reason they're winning messages is because they come from the heart. Sometimes when the issue is abstract, and we talk about, marriage is under attack or any thing like that, that's an abstract concept that's not about a real person. But when we talk about, we've been together for 26 years together, we're growing old together, we finally got to get married in front of our friends and family.
Right. Let's talk about some of the maybe not so romantic facts. There are real numbers involved. I mean, there's a number of laws that people who are not legally married don't have access to rights for, all kinds of things. Talk to me a little bit about those numbers. Inheritance laws, hospital visitation. There was that case less than 2 months ago where someone wasn't allowed to visit their longtime partner because they weren't legally married.
Sure. Well, there are over 1,000 federal rights that come with marriage and marriage alone, and no one in a civil union or a domestic partnership gets those rights. These rights are very fundamental. We really think of the wedding vows to be together for sickness and in health. Till death do you part. These are the times when you need those 1,000 rights, be it hospital visitation or Most recently, immigration is very much on our minds, as same-sex couples are not being included in immigration reform before the Congress right now. That's another of the 1,000 rights that come with marriage, and one reason why it's so important that the U.S. Supreme Court overturned DOMA.
How did that make you feel? I mean, at the time of this taping, that decision not to include same-sex marriage equality in the immigration bill, I think, you know, I'm sure it struck some people as pragmatism. It struck others as, well, they're dumping on us again.
Well, every time it happens, it feels like just a punch in the gut. You know, and at the Supreme Court argument, one of the more conservative justices were saying, you know, hey, why do you need the court to do anything? Because, you know, isn't everybody falling all over themselves to support gay marriage? But yet again, we see that it's a real political struggle. And it's one of the reasons why these cases are so important, too, because they're saying that they're seeking before the court that lesbian and gay people be protected under the Constitution, just like other groups that have been discriminated against. And that's very important protection under the Constitution. So in future times that senators couldn't do that, we'd have our constitutional rights, just like every American should have.
Right, right. How much are politicians who don't support same-sex marriage having their feet held to the fire now? It used to be it was completely safe to be anti-gay in an elected official, and now not so much.
It's really interesting to see how that shift has happened so quickly, because it's just been over a year since the president evolved or came out for marriage equality.
Talk about great PR messaging here.
And that was seen as a very risky move at that time, you know, up for re-election. You know, could this be an issue that was decisive in his re-election campaign? Interestingly, it turned out it was almost a non-issue. And since then, to see, you know, a whole cascade of senators, Democrat and Republican, coming out for equal marriage rights, clearly the other side is feeling that it's no longer a comfortable position to be in. They're on the wrong side of history.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have some Joe McCarthys out there.
And I think it's a real credit to how all sorts of sectors of our community have just said full on. You know, I think in a sense, after the stinging loss in Prop 8, everybody said, you know, we're not, no more, you know. And regardless of who you are and what your connection to the political system is, we are speaking up in all sectors, and I think it's showing in people changing their positions.
In our last few minutes, tell me what was the worst part of the battle for you and the best, barring that by the time this airs we don't have marriage equality as a federal right. That'd be nice. What was the worst day and the best day of the fight?
Well, I'd say both the worst and the best is actually when we went to the Central Valley of California before Prop 8 got on the ballot and stood right next to people who are gathering signatures to take away our rights, and in places that had never probably heard, you know, seen same-sex couples, we said, do you support the freedom for lesbian and gay people to marry? It was very painful to see people gathering signatures to take away our rights, but it was great to be standing up for who we are.
Right. And the same for you?
Well, the highlight for me was our wedding day, and exchanging vows in front of our friends and family, finally saying I do meant the world, meant the absolute world to us.
Great.
So that's what sustains us, actually, through the hard times, that it's all about love.
Great. Thank you so much, Stuart and John. Hopefully we'll be celebrating soon. I'm David Perry. Thanks for watching 10%, and we'll see you next week.